Story number 1. Whispers in the Shadows of Starved Rock. Winter in Illinois was unforgiving, but nothing could prepare me for the darkness that awaited me on that fateful New Year's Eve in 1960. My name is Mark Thompson, and I was a night security guard at the Grand Oak Hotel, nestled near the serene yet enigmatic Starved Rock State Park. The park was a place of natural beauty, its towering sandstone cliffs and cascading waterfalls drawing visitors year-round. But beneath its picturesque exterior lay secrets that would forever haunt my soul. It was December 31st, 1960, a night when the air was thick with anticipation and the promise of a fresh start. The Grand Oak Hotel was bustling with guests celebrating the arrival of the new year. The grand ballroom filled with laughter, music, and the clinking of champagne glasses. As the night deepened, the hotel quieted down, the revelers retreating to their rooms, leaving behind an eerie silence that enveloped the grand old building. My shift began at midnight, the perfect time to ensure everything was in order before the dawn broke. The corridors were dimly lit, the shadows dancing on the walls as my flashlight cast fleeting patterns across the ornate wallpaper. I patrolled the hallways, checking the locks and ensuring that all was well. It was during one of these routine checks that I first heard it, a faint whisper, barely audible over the distant sounds of the party fading away. I paused, straining to listen. The whisper seemed to call my name, a soft, mournful echo that sent chills down my spine. Mark, Mark. It was as if someone, or something, was trying to reach out to me from the depths of the night. I shook off the unease, convincing myself it was just the wind or the building settling, and continued my patrol. But the whispers persisted, growing louder with each passing hour. They seemed to emanate from the grand staircase, a place I had always found strangely unsettling. The staircase was a marvel of craftsmanship, its ornate banisters and intricate carvings a testament to the hotel's grandeur. Yet, on this night, it felt like a gateway to another realm, a place where shadows whispered secrets and darkness held sway. As I approached the staircase, the temperature dropped sharply, my breath visible in the frigid air. The whispers turned into soft sobs, their sorrowful tones resonating through the silent halls. I hesitated, a knot of fear tightening in my stomach, but my sense of duty pushed me forward. I ascended the staircase, each step creaking under my weight, the whispers growing more intense with every floor. Reaching the top of the staircase, I found myself in a grand hallway lined with closed doors. The sobs echoed off the walls, guiding me towards the end of the corridor where an old, wooden door stood ajar. The room beyond was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of smoke and something else, something metallic and unsettling. I approached cautiously, the whispers now a cacophony of sorrow and despair. Pushing the door open, I stepped into a room that seemed frozen in time. The furniture was covered in dust, the curtains heavy with layers of neglect. In the center of the room stood an antique mirror, its surface cracked and clouded, reflecting the dim light in fragmented patterns. As I approached the mirror, the whispers reached a crescendo, their voices overlapping in a haunting symphony of pain. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted further, and the room plunged into darkness. My flashlight flickered and died, leaving me in complete blackness. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for my backup light. But before I could find it, a figure materialized before me, a woman dressed in an elegant red gown, her face pale and contorted with anguish. Her eyes were hollow voids, staring directly into mine with an intensity that made my blood run cold. "Help us," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the deafening silence. "Remember us." I staggered back, my mind racing with fear and confusion. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling despite my efforts to stay calm. The woman didn't respond. Instead, she reached out a hand, her fingers elongated and ethereal, as if trying to grasp something just beyond reach. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent, forming words that sent shivers down my spine. "Remember our stories. Remember our pain." Suddenly, The room began to distort, the walls melting into shadows and the floor twisting into unnatural shapes. I felt an overwhelming sense of despair, as if the very essence of the place was absorbing my fears and regrets. The whispers transformed into screams, the sound echoing through my very soul, each cry a testament to lives lost and dreams shattered. In that moment, I realized that the whispers were not just random sounds but the lingering souls of those who had met untimely ends within these walls. The hotel, with its grand facade and elegant interiors, was a prison for their restless spirits, trapped in a cycle of pain and remembrance. I knew I had to help them, to find a way to break the chains that bound them to this place. Desperate to escape the nightmare unfolding around me, I turned to leave, but the shadows closed in, their presence suffocating and oppressive. The whispers grew louder, their voices merging into a single, mournful plea. Remember us, free us. Summoning every ounce of courage, I focused on their suffering, my empathy bridging the gap between our worlds. I will remember you, I promised, my voice steady despite the fear gripping me. I will honor your stories and help you find peace. As the words left my lips, the shadows began to recede, their grip loosening as a sense of calm washed over the room. The woman in red faded into the light, her expression softening into one of gratitude and relief. The whispers transformed into gentle sighs, the sorrowful cries giving way to a peaceful silence that settled over the room like a comforting blanket. Exhausted but resolute, I left the room, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as I made my way back through the grand staircase and down the silent corridors. The whispers had ceased, replaced by a serene stillness that seemed to breathe life back into the grand old hotel. As I exited the building, the first light of dawn began to break through the clouds, illuminating the snow-covered landscape with a warm, golden glow. In the days that followed, the Grand Oak Hotel returned to its usual state of quiet elegance, the whispers of the past fading into memory. But the experience left an indelible mark on me, a haunting reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring power of empathy. I knew that the souls trapped within those walls had finally found the peace they so desperately sought, their stories remembered and their pain acknowledged. Years later, the case of Lillian Oding and the mysterious murders at Starved Rock remained unsolved, the secrets buried beneath layers of time and tragedy. But the whispers of that New Year's Eve night continued to echo in my mind, a testament to the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown and the enduring bond between the living and the restless spirits of the past. But sometimes, on the coldest nights of winter, when the wind howls just right and the snow blankets the world in silence, I catch a faint echo of those whispers carried by the breeze, a haunting reminder of the night I faced the shadows of Starved Rock and helped two lost souls find their way to peace. Story number 2. Whispers on Route 30. Winter in Pennsylvania was unforgiving. The snow lay thick on the asphalt, turning Route 30 into a ghostly ribbon snaking through the desolate countryside. My name is Jack Reynolds, and for the past 5 years, I've been a night patrol officer for the Pennsylvania State Police. Most nights are uneventful, the quiet interrupted only by the occasional wildlife or the distant hum of a truck passing through. But the night of December 31st, 1972, was different, etched into my memory as one of the most haunting cases I've ever encountered. It was New Year's Eve, a time when the night was supposed to be filled with hope and celebration. Families gathered in their homes, exchanging good wishes and dreaming of new beginnings. But for Ashley Mitchell, it was the night that would lead her into the shadows, never to be seen again. I received the call just after midnight. A caller reported seeing a woman standing alone on Route 30, near the Old Miller's Rest area. She was dressed in a red coat, her hair blowing wildly in the cold wind. The description was vague, but something about it felt off. The Miller's Rest area was a remote spot, frequented by few, a perfect setting for an unsettling encounter. Arriving at the scene, the snow was falling heavier, obscuring visibility. The Miller's Rest area was deserted, the remnants of a forgotten gas station barely visible through the whiteout. I parked my cruiser and grabbed my flashlight, the beam cutting through the swirling snow as I made my way toward the reported location. As I approached, the sound of my footsteps crunching on the icy ground seemed unnaturally loud. My breath formed visible puffs in the frigid air, and my heart pounded in my chest. There, standing near the edge of the highway, was the woman. She was exactly as the caller described, dressed in a striking red coat, her hair tousled by the wind, her face obscured by the shadows of the night. "Miss," I called out, my voice betraying my unease. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" She didn't respond. Instead, she stood motionless, staring directly into the abyss of the highway. The snowflakes clung to her coat, making her appear almost ethereal, like a ghostly apparition. I took a cautious step forward, my flashlight trembling in my hand. "Mississippi, please," I urged, sensing something was terribly wrong. "If you're lost or hurt, I can help you." Still, she remained silent, her eyes fixed on the endless expanse of darkness before her. A chill ran down my spine as I felt an inexplicable urge to approach her, to offer comfort, but something held me back, a sense of foreboding that made me hesitate. Suddenly, the woman began to fade, her form becoming translucent as if melting into the night air. I reached out instinctively, but my hand passed through her as if she were made of mist. The temperature dropped further, the cold seeping into my bones, and the whispers of the wind seemed to carry a mournful melody. Panicked, I stepped back, my mind racing with questions. Who was she? Why was she here on such a bitterly cold night? As I stood there, trying to make sense of the impossible sight, the whispers grew louder, forming coherent words that sent chills down my spine. "Don't leave us." I spun around, the sound echoing through the empty rest area. The highway stretched out before me, dark and unwelcoming, and the realization hit me like a ton of bricks. She wasn't alone. There was a presence here, something dark and malevolent that clung to the night like a shroud. Desperate to escape, I turned to my cruiser, fumbling with the keys as the whispers intensified. But the engine wouldn't start, the dashboard lights flickering ominously. I was trapped, caught in a nightmare from which there was no awakening. As I struggled to free myself, the woman's voice echoed in my mind, her plea intertwined with the howling wind. "Remember us." The air around me grew thick with a suffocating darkness, the shadows lengthening and twisting into grotesque shapes that danced along the edges of my vision. I could feel their sorrow, their pain, wrapping around me like invisible chains, pulling me deeper into the abyss. In a moment of sheer terror, I managed to get the cruiser running, the engine roaring to life as I slammed the accelerator, the tires skidding on the icy pavement. The rest area disappeared behind me as I sped down Route 30, the night swallowing me whole. But the nightmare wasn't over. No matter how fast I drove, the whispers followed, their sorrowful pleas echoing in my mind. The woman's face haunted me, her hollow eyes staring into my soul, reminding me of the tragedy that had unfolded on that fateful night. Determined to uncover the truth, I dove into the archives, poring over old newspaper clippings and police reports. The story of Ashley Mitchell and Loria Bible had faded from public memory, overshadowed by the passage of time. But the mystery of their disappearance remained, a puzzle with pieces that refused to fit. Ashley and Loria were best friends, inseparable since childhood. On that New Year's Eve, they had decided to go ice skating at a nearby pond, popular spot for locals. But somewhere along the way, their path had led them astray, down the treacherous Route 30 that snaked through the unforgiving winter landscape. No witnesses had seen what happened that night. No clues had been found to explain their sudden disappearance. The only evidence was the charred remains of their parents, victims of the same mysterious fire that had claimed their lives. It was as if the entire family had been erased from existence, leaving behind only unanswered questions and lingering fears. As I delved deeper, I began to uncover unsettling patterns. stories of similar disappearances, unexplained phenomena, and rumors of restless spirits haunting the highways and byways of Pennsylvania. The more I learned, the more I realized that Ashley and Loria were not alone in their fate. They were part of something far greater, something dark and ancient that thrived on fear and sorrow. One night, as I sat alone in my office, the wind howling outside like the cries of lost souls, I heard it, the familiar whisper that had haunted me since that night on Route 30. "Remember us." I jumped up, heart racing, and grabbed my coat, the chill of the night urging me to take action. I knew what I had to do: confront the darkness that had claimed Ashley and Loria, to give their spirits the closure they so desperately needed. Driving back to the Miller's Rest area, the snow falling in relentless sheets, I felt a presence watching me, the eyes of the lost staring into my very being. The highway stretched out before me, a desolate path illuminated only by the pale glow of the moon. I parked my cruiser and approached the scene, the weight of the past pressing down on me. Standing at the edge of the highway, I felt the air grow colder, the whispers enveloping me in their mournful embrace. "Don't leave us." Drawing a deep breath, I spoke into the night, my voice steady despite the fear that gnawed at my insides. "Ashley, Loria, I'm here to help you find peace. Let go of your pain and move on." The whispers transformed into a harmonious melody, the sorrowful notes intertwining with the stillness of the night. The snow around me began to swirl, forming ethereal shapes that danced in the pale light. Slowly, the figures of Ashley and Loria materialized before me, their translucent forms shimmering like specters in the snow. "How?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "How can I help you?" They reached out their hands, their eyes filled with an endless sadness. "You must remember us," Ashley whispered, her voice echoing through the night. "Keep our stories alive, so we are never forgotten." Loria nodded, her gaze unwavering. "Only then can we find the peace we seek." As I stood there, the weight of their plea settling over me, I felt a surge of determination. I knew that their memories had to be preserved, that their stories had to be told so that their spirits could finally rest. With a heavy heart, I vowed to honor their legacy, to uncover the truth behind their disappearance and ensure that their voices would never fade into the shadows. Driving away from Miller's Rest, the snow began to ease, the whispers fading into the distance as the first light of dawn broke through the clouds. The night had been a journey into the depths of sorrow and fear, but it had also been a testament to the enduring power of memory and the unbreakable bonds of friendship. In the days that followed, I continued my investigation with renewed purpose, piecing together the fragments of Ashley and Loria's lives and the events that had led to their tragic end. Their story became a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is a light that can guide us home. But sometimes, on the coldest nights of winter, when the wind howls just right and the snow blankets the world in silence, I catch a faint echo of their whispers carried by the breeze, a haunting reminder of the night I faced the ghosts of Route 30 and helped two lost souls find their way to peace. Story number 3. The Director's Cut. Winter in Alberta was unforgiving. The biting cold seeped into every crevice of the town, turning the streets into silent, frozen corridors. My name is Daniel Mitchell, a freelance journalist with a knack for uncovering the darkest corners of human nature. When I first heard about the disappearance of John Altinger, a man from our town, I knew there was more to the story than met the eye. John was a quiet man, known for his gentle demeanor and love for photography. He lived alone in a modest home on the outskirts of town, his days spent capturing the serene beauty of the Alberta landscape. But on New Year's Eve in 2008, everything changed. John vanished without a trace after a night that was supposed to be filled with celebration and hope. The night was particularly harsh. Snowstorms had blanketed the region, making travel treacherous. John had spent the evening at a local party, a rare social gathering for him, according to his friends. He had met someone online that night, a charming man named Alex Turner, an amateur filmmaker with a passion for horror movies. They had connected through a dating website, bonding over their shared interests in art and storytelling. I decided to delve deeper into John's disappearance, convinced that the online connection held the key to unraveling the mystery. My investigation led me to Alex Turner, a reclusive figure who lived in a dilapidated house just a few miles from John's residence. The house was a relic of past ambitions, with broken windows and overgrown ivy clinging to its sides like desperate hands reaching for salvation. When I approached Alex, he welcomed me with a nervous smile, his eyes darting around the room as if expecting someone, or something, to appear at any moment. The interior was cluttered with old film equipment, scripts, and stacks of unfinished projects. It was clear that Alex's dreams had been long abandoned, his passion reduced to a haunting reminder of what could have been. "We never meant for anything bad to happen to John," Alex insisted, his voice wavering with genuine remorse. "He was just helping me with my latest project, a documentary on the psychology of fear. We wanted to create something real, something that would make people feel the fear we explored in our films." His explanation was plausible, yet something about his demeanor didn't sit right with me. There was an undercurrent of obsession in his words, a fixation that bordered on madness. As the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that Alex was hiding something, a truth buried beneath layers of guilt and fear. Determined to get to the bottom of the story, I spent the next few days piecing together the events leading up to John's disappearance. Witnesses described seeing John leave Alex's house around midnight, never to return. The police investigation had been thorough, yet no solid leads emerged. The case had gone cold, leaving the town to grapple with unanswered questions and lingering fears. One evening, as I reviewed my notes, a knock echoed through my apartment door. I opened it to find Alex standing there, his face pale and his eyes haunted. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated but nodded, stepping aside to let him in. We sat down, the air thick with tension and unspoken truths. "I need to tell you everything," Alex began, his hands trembling as he clutched a worn leather journal. "It's not just about the film. There's something else, something I couldn't control." He opened the journal, revealing pages filled with frantic handwriting and disturbing sketches of shadowy figures and grotesque scenes. "I started seeing things after we began filming," he confessed. "Visions of darkness, of people who shouldn't be here. John tried to help me, to find rational explanations. But the more we delved into the psychology of fear, the more these apparitions became real." As he spoke, the room seemed to grow colder, the shadows lengthening as if the darkness Alex described was creeping in around us. One night, after a long shoot, I woke up to find John missing. The visions were more intense, the fear palpable. I thought he had left, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible had happened. Alex's confession painted a chilling picture of a man consumed by his obsession, his pursuit of fear blurring the lines between reality and nightmare. I tried to recreate the scenes from my visions, thinking it would help me understand them, but instead, it drew something out of the shadows, something that took John. I felt a shiver run down my spine, the room heavy with the weight of his words. "What did you do?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He looked up, his eyes filled with sorrow and desperation. "I confronted it, trying to banish the darkness, but it was too strong, too hungry, took John, and now it wants more." The revelation left me speechless, the gravity of the situation sinking in. It was no longer just a case of a missing person. It was a descent into a supernatural horror born from human obsession and the thin veil that separates reality from the abyss. Determined to uncover the truth and bring peace to John's restless spirit, I knew I had to confront the darkness Alex had unleashed. Armed with the journal and a newfound resolve, I returned to Alex's house, the snow swirling in the wind like ghostly apparitions dancing in the night. As I approached, the house seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, the shadows flickering in unnatural ways. I found Alex in his workshop, the room dimly lit by the eerie glow of old film projectors casting twisted images on the walls. "It's here," he whispered, pointing to the corner where the shadows seemed to writhe and contort. "It's feeding on our fears, our obsessions. If we don't stop it, it will consume everything." Together, we devised a plan to reverse the ritual that had summoned the darkness, using the very techniques Alex had developed for his films. The process was grueling, filled with moments of intense fear and moments where it felt like the darkness was closing in on us. The shadows danced around us, whispering threats and promises of eternal torment. As the clock struck midnight, the pinnacle of the new year, we began the final steps of the ritual. The air grew thick with tension, the temperature dropping to unbearable lows. The shadows coalesced into a single, monstrous form, its presence suffocating and all-encompassing. It reached out with tendrils of darkness, seeking to claim us as its next victims, summoning every ounce of courage. I led Alex in reciting the incantations from the journal, our voices merging in a desperate plea for salvation. The darkness screamed, a sound that tore through the very fabric of reality, as we fought to banish it back into the abyss from which it had come. With a final, triumphant shout, the darkness recoiled, the shadows dissipating into nothingness. The oppressive weight lifted, and the room was bathed in the first light of dawn, the storm outside subsiding as if the battle had been waged not just within the walls of the house, but within the very soul of our town. Exhausted but victorious, Alex and I stood amidst the ruins of his obsessive pursuits, the haunting legacy of that fateful night finally put to rest. The truth had been uncovered, and the restless spirit of John Altinger could finally find peace, free from the shadows that had held him captive for so long. As I drove away from Alex's house, the first rays of sunlight breaking through the storm clouds, I felt a sense of closure that had eluded me for years. The story of John Altinger was no longer a haunting mystery but a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring battle between light and darkness. But sometimes, on the coldest nights of winter, when the wind howls just right and the snow blankets the world in silence, I catch a faint echo of that night carried by the breeze. A haunting reminder of the night I faced the darkness of obsession and helped a lost soul find his way to peace. Story number 4. Echoes of Freeman House. Winter in Stillwater, Oklahoma, was relentless. The snow piled high against the windows, muffling the sounds of the outside world and casting long, eerie shadows across the desolate landscape. My name is Michael Sanders, and for the past decade, I've been drawn to unsolved mysteries, haunted by a curiosity that refuses to be quelled. The disappearance of Ashley Freeman and Loria Bible in 1999 was one such case that had consumed my thoughts ever since I first heard about it. It was New Year's Eve when tragedy struck the Freeman family. Their home, a warm and welcoming abode on the outskirts of town, was engulfed in flames late that night. The fire was swift and merciless, reducing the house to ashes within minutes. The local fire department arrived promptly, finding the bodies of Ashley's parents, charred and lifeless, but no trace of the two young girls. Despite extensive searches and countless theories, Ashley and Loria were never found, their disappearance remaining one of Oklahoma's most perplexing mysteries. Driven by a need to uncover the truth, I decided to visit the now-abandoned Freeman house. The site had become a local legend, avoided by most and spoken of only in hushed, fearful tones. As I approached the property, the wind howled through the barren trees, carrying with it whispers of the past that seemed to beckon me closer. The remnants of the house stood solemnly amidst the snow, its charred facade a stark reminder of that fateful night. Stepping inside, the air was thick with the scent of smoke and decay. The once vibrant home was now a skeleton of its former self, the walls scarred by fire and the floor littered with debris. I moved cautiously through the rooms, each step echoing in the oppressive silence. It was easy to imagine the chaos that had unfolded here, the desperate cries and the terrifying realization that something was terribly wrong. As I entered what had once been the living room, my flashlight caught sight of a partially burned photograph lying on the floor. It showed the Freeman family smiling happily, a stark contrast to the destruction that now surrounded me. My heart ached at the sight, and I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to Ashley and Loria. Were they still alive, trapped somewhere within these walls, or had something more sinister taken them? Determined to find answers, I set up my equipment, hoping to capture any signs of the missing girls. Hours passed with nothing but the occasional creak of the old house settling under the weight of time. Just as I was beginning to lose hope, I heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper that seemed to emanate from the very walls. "Help us!" My blood ran cold as I followed the sound, my flashlight guiding me towards the basement door. The stairs were steep and covered in a thick layer of dust, making each step a challenge. Reaching the bottom, I found myself in a dimly lit room, the air heavy with a sense of despair. The whispers grew louder, more distinct, forming words that sent shivers down my spine. "Ashley, Loria." I scanned the room, my heart pounding in my chest, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Just as I was about to turn back, a cold gust of wind swept through the basement, extinguishing my flashlight and plunging me into darkness. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for my backup light, but the room remained silent once more. Desperate to make sense of what I was experiencing, I sat down and began to document everything. The night stretched on, each minute feeling like an eternity as the house seemed to come alive with the echoes of the past. The whispers returned intermittently, always the same names, always the same plea for help. It was as if Ashley and Loria were reaching out from beyond, their spirits unable to move on from the tragedy that had befallen them. As dawn approached, the oppressive atmosphere began to lift, replaced by a heavy sense of exhaustion. I knew I had to leave, to take what I'd learned and share it with the world, hoping that someone, somewhere, might finally uncover the truth behind the Freeman girls' disappearance. Driving away from the house, the first light of day breaking through the clouds, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. The Freeman house stood silent once more, its secrets still tightly held within its walls. But the whispers of Ashley and Loria had left an indelible mark on my soul, a haunting reminder of the lives lost and the mysteries that linger in the shadows. In the weeks that followed, I continued my investigation, speaking to anyone who might have information about that tragic night. I met with old neighbors, family friends, and even former investigators, piecing together the fragmented accounts and searching for any clue that could shed light on the girls' fate. Each conversation deepened the mystery, revealing inconsistencies and unexplained phenomena that only fueled my determination. One night, as I was poring over old case files in my study, the power went out, plunging the room into darkness. The only light came from the flickering candles I had lit to stave off the chill. I felt a sudden presence in the room, a coldness that made my skin crawl. The whispers began anew, louder and more urgent this time. "Find us. Help us find our way." Terrified yet resolute, I grabbed my coat and rushed back to the Freeman house, determined to confront whatever force was keeping Ashley and Loria tethered to this world. The storm had returned, the wind howling through the trees as if warning me to turn back. But I couldn't, too much was at stake. Arriving at the house, I was greeted by an otherworldly sight. The house seemed to pulse with an energy that was both terrifying and mesmerizing. As I stepped inside, the temperature plummeted, my breath visible in the icy air. The whispers filled the rooms, guiding me towards the attic, a place that had never been thoroughly searched. Climbing the narrow staircase, I felt the weight of unseen eyes upon me. The attic door creaked open, revealing a room that had remained untouched by the flames. Shelves lined the walls, filled with old toys and personal belongings, remnants of the girls' lives that had been abruptly interrupted. In the center of the room stood two figures, Ashley and Loria, both young and lifeless, their eyes hollow and filled with an eternal sadness. "Tear us away from this place," Loria whispered, her voice echoing through the attic. "We can't move on." I approached them slowly, tears welling up in my eyes. "I'm here to help you," I said softly. "I want to set you free." The girls reached out their hands, their cold touch sending a jolt of energy through me. The attic began to shake, the walls closing in as the whispers grew louder, more desperate. I grabbed their hands, feeling a surge of power that connected me to their spirits, a bond forged in the depths of tragedy. Together, we stood in the center of the attic, the storm raging outside mirroring the chaos within. The whispers transformed into a harmonious chant, a plea for peace that resonated deep within my soul. I closed my eyes, focusing on their faces, willing their spirits to find the closure they so desperately sought. A blinding light enveloped the room, and I felt the grip of darkness loosening. The girls began to fade, their forms dissolving into the light as a sense of calm washed over me. The attic door swung open, the storm subsiding as the first rays of dawn broke through the clouds. As I stood there, alone in the now peaceful attic, I knew that Ashley and Loria had finally found their way to peace. The Freeman house stood silent, this tragic history finally acknowledged and understood. The mystery that had haunted me for years had been unraveled, not through answers, but through empathy and compassion for the lost souls who had reached out for help. Driving away from the house, the morning sun casting a warm glow on the snow-covered landscape, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The echoes of the Freeman girls' whispers had finally been silenced, their spirits free to move on from the shadows that had held them captive for so long. But sometimes, on the coldest nights of winter, when the wind howls just right and the snow blankets the world in silence, I catch a faint echo of their whispers carried by the breeze, a haunting reminder of the night I faced the tragedy of the Freeman family and helped two restless souls find their way to peace. Story number 5. Whispers by Herman Lake. Winter in Northern California has a way of seeping into your bones, making the nights feel endless and the shadows grow long with secrets. My name is Tom Walker, and I never believed in ghosts or the supernatural. Growing up near Herman Lake, I heard the stories, tales of the Zodiac Killer, a name that sent chills down the spines of even the bravest souls. But I dismissed them as urban legends, until one fateful New Year's Eve in 1968 changed everything. It was December 31st, 1968, and the air was crisp with the promise of a new beginning. The town of Benicia was bustling with preparations for the midnight celebrations, but the serenity of the lake belied the darkness that lurked in its depths. I was working the night shift at the local diner, a modest establishment that served as a gathering place for truckers, late-night workers, and the occasional wanderer seeking solace in a warm meal. The night was uneventful at first. The regulars trickled in, sharing stories and laughter over steaming cups of coffee and plates of hearty stew. But as the clock edged closer to midnight, an uneasy tension settled over the diner. It wasn't just the anticipation of the coming year. There was an unspoken fear, a collective anxiety that something was amiss. At around 11:45 p.m., the door swung open, and a man stepped inside. He was tall, with a lean build and a trench coat that seemed out of place on a chilly December night. His face was obscured by the brim of his hat, casting deep shadows over his eyes. There was an air of menace about him, a palpable sense of danger that made even the most hardened patrons shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Evening," I greeted him, trying to keep my voice steady despite the unease gnawing at me. He nodded curtly and took a seat at the corner booth, away from the other customers. I watched him out of the corner of my eye, noting the way his hands clutched a worn leather briefcase tightly. There was something unsettling about his presence, a feeling that he was not just another traveler passing through. As the night wore on, the man remained silent, his eyes fixed on the menu as if searching for something. I refilled his coffee cup without a word, feeling an inexplicable urge to make him comfortable despite the growing tension. Around midnight, just as the crowd began to thin, the man stood up, leaving a generous tip before heading towards the door. But as he reached the exit, something strange happened. The lights flickered, and the temperature in the diner seemed to drop drastically. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I followed him out. Drawn by a mix of curiosity and fear, the streets were deserted, the snow-covered ground reflecting the dim light of the street lamps. The man paused at the edge of the parking lot, turning slowly to face me. "Looking for something?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly. I shook my head, trying to muster the courage to speak. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay." He smirked, a cold, unsettling gesture. "I'm always okay," he replied, his eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intensity. "But maybe you're not." Before I could react, he lunged forward, and everything went black. When I regained consciousness, I was lying on the cold ground near the edge of Herman Lake. My head throbbed with pain, and my vision was blurry. Panic set in as I struggled to sit up, my mind racing to piece together what had happened. The man was nowhere to be seen, and the lake before me was calm, its surface undisturbed by the night's chaos. I stumbled to my feet, my legs weak and trembling, and began to make my way back to the diner. As I walked, memories of the encounter flooded back, his hollow eyes, the sinister smile, and the feeling of impending doom that had settled over me like a dark cloud. The whispers of the Zodiac killer stories now seemed all too real, their eerie presence woven into the fabric of my reality. Reaching the diner, I found it empty, the remnants of the night's patrons gone without a trace. The clock on the wall showed it was well past midnight, the new year already upon us. I approached the counter, my hands shaking as I searched for something to soothe my nerves. But before I could take a sip of coffee, the lights flickered again, and the door creaked open. There he was, the man in the trench coat, standing once more in the doorway. This time, his face was partially visible, revealing sharp features and eyes that seemed to pierce through my very soul. He walked towards me with deliberate steps, the air around him growing colder with each passing second. "Happy New Year," he whispered, his voice a haunting echo that sent chills down my spine. I backed away, fear gripping my heart as he continued to advance. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice barely audible over the howling wind outside. He stopped inches from me, his presence overwhelming. "To remind you that some mysteries are best left unsolved," he replied, his eyes narrowing into slits. "To remind you of the darkness that resides within us all." Before I could react, he vanished, leaving me alone in the empty diner, the oppressive silence more suffocating than ever. My mind raced with questions. Who was he? What did he mean by his cryptic message? And most importantly, was the Zodiac killer truly supernatural? A ghostly entity haunting the living? Determined to find answers, I began to research the case more intensely, delving into old newspapers, police reports, and eyewitness accounts. The double murder near Herman Lake had baffled authorities for years, the lack of evidence and the elusive nature of the killer making it one of the most perplexing cases in American history. The cryptic letters sent to the press only deepened the mystery, the ciphers and symbols taunting investigators with their hidden meanings. As the days turned into weeks, I became obsessed with uncovering the truth behind the man in the trench coat and his connection to the Zodiac killer. I spent countless nights poring over documents, visiting the crime scene, and interviewing anyone who might have information. The more I delved, the more I felt the presence of something dark and malevolent watching my every move, a shadow that seemed to follow me wherever I went. One night, driven by a mixture of fear and determination, I returned to Herman Lake, the place where it all began. The snow had ceased, leaving the landscape pristine and eerily quiet. The lake shimmered under the moonlight, its surface reflecting the haunting beauty of the night. I stood at the edge, the chill in the air making my bones ache, and closed my eyes, trying to summon the courage to confront whatever lingered in the darkness. "Show yourself," I whispered, my voice trembling with both fear and resolve. The water began to ripple, and the air grew thick with tension. From the depths emerged a figure, tall and imposing, cloaked in shadows, his presence both terrifying and mesmerizing. It was him, the man in the trench coat, the embodiment of the Zodiac killer's darkness. "You seek the truth," he stated, his voice resonating with a sinister authority. "But some truths are meant to remain hidden." I took a step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. "Why are you doing this? Why haunt me?" He regarded me with hollow eyes, the weight of his sorrow and rage evident in his gaze. "To remind you of the fragility of life, the thin line between sanity and madness. To remind you that darkness exists within us all." As he spoke, the surroundings seemed to warp and twist, the serene beauty of the lake transforming into a nightmarish landscape of shadows and fear. The whispers of lost souls echoed through the air, their sorrowful pleas intertwining with his own voice, creating a symphony of anguish that threatened to overwhelm me. "I need to let you go," pleaded, tears welling up in my eyes. "Help me find peace." For a moment, his expression softened, the anger and sorrow flickering in his eyes like a dying flame. "Perhaps," he murmured, his form beginning to fade, "perhaps understanding brings peace. But remember, darkness is a part of us all. Embrace it, and you might find the strength to overcome." With that final cryptic message, he vanished, leaving me alone by the lake, the oppressive darkness lifting as quickly as it had descended. I stood there, trembling and breathless, the echoes of his words lingering in the cold night air. In the aftermath of that encounter, I found a sense of closure that had eluded me for so long. The man in the trench coat and the haunting legacy of the Zodiac killer remained intertwined in my mind, a reminder of the darkness that resides within and the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown. I continued my work, driven by a newfound understanding of the mysteries that lie hidden in the shadows, always wary of the darkness that watches and waits. But sometimes, on the coldest nights of winter, when the wind howls just right and the snow blankets the world in silence, I catch a faint whisper carried by the breeze. A haunting echo of the night I faced the Zodiac killer's darkness by Herman Lake and learned that some mysteries are best left unsolved. Story number 6. Echoes of Sodor, a haunting legacy. Winter in West Virginia was unforgiving. The snow lay thick on the ground, muffling the sounds of the night and casting long, ghostly shadows across the desolate landscape. My name is Michael Soderman, and though my last name bears no relation to the tragic events of 1945, the haunting legacy of the Sodor family has always intrigued me. As a freelance journalist with a penchant for uncovering the truth behind unsolved mysteries, the story of the Sodor House fire has been a constant thorn in my side, urging me to delve deeper into its enigmatic past. It was a cold December night when I first stumbled upon the case. I was sipping hot coffee in a dimly lit cafe in Charleston, scrolling through old newspaper archives for my latest assignment. Amidst the pages yellowed with age, one headline caught my eye: "Mysterious fire ravages Sodor home. 5 children disappear." My curiosity piqued. I clicked on the digital version, revealing a tragic story that had left an indelible mark on the community. The Sodor family, George and Jenny Sodor and their 10 children, experienced a devastating fire on Christmas Eve, 1945. The blaze consumed their home in West Point, yet 5 children, Georgina, Louis, Martha, Jenny, and Betty, vanished without a trace. No bodies were found among the ashes, and despite extensive searches, their whereabouts remained a haunting mystery. Over the years, theories abounded: kidnapping, arson, and even supernatural explanations. But the truth, as elusive as it was, remained just out of reach. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to visit West Point. The town had grown, its population swelling with new residents unaware of the chilling history that lurked beneath its serene surface. As I drove through the snow-covered streets, the old Sodor house stood at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, its facade marred by years of neglect and the harshness of winter. The once grand home now appeared desolate, its windows boarded up and the garden overrun with wild shrubs. I approached the house cautiously, the wind howling through the broken panes and rattling the shutters. The air was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional creak of the old structure settling under the weight of time. My footsteps echoed on the gravel driveway as I circled the property, searching for any signs of life or hidden clues that might shed light on the mysterious disappearance. Inside, the house was a labyrinth of decaying rooms, each one frozen in time. Dust-covered furniture lay scattered, remnants of a family life abruptly halted. As I explored, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the weight of unseen eyes pressing down on me. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath, guarding secrets that refused to be uncovered. In the heart of the house stood the remnants of the living room, where the fire had first broken out. The hearth was empty now, the mantel cluttered with old photographs and charred remnants of personal belongings. I carefully sifted through the ashes, searching for anything that might hint at the fate of the missing children. My fingers brushed against a scorched piece of fabric, a fragment of a blanket, perhaps belonging to one of the children. The discovery sent a chill down my spine, the remnants of tragedy whispering their sorrow through the silence. As midnight approached, the temperature in the house seemed to drop, the cold seeping into my bones. I decided to set up camp in the living room, hoping that the stillness of the night would provide some clarity. The only source of light was my flickering flashlight, casting long shadows that danced eerily across the walls. I sat down, pulling out my notebook and pen, determined to document every detail. Hours passed in a monotonous rhythm, the only sound my own breathing and the occasional creak of the old house. But as the clock struck 3 a.m., the atmosphere shifted. The air grew thick with an unnatural presence, a sense of impending doom that made my skin crawl. I felt an overwhelming urge to leave, but something held me in place, a force that I couldn't comprehend. Suddenly, the room was filled with the sound of soft, indistinct whispers, as if a dozen voices were murmuring just beyond the edge of hearing. My heart pounded in my chest as I strained to listen, the whispers coalescing into faint, sorrowful pleas. Remember us? Remember us. A cold gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing my flashlight and plunging me into darkness. Panic surged through me as I fumbled to relight it, the beam wavering before stabilizing. In the dim light, I saw her, a young girl in a tattered dress, her face pale and hollow, eyes vacant and filled with an endless sorrow. She stood by the window, staring out into the night, her presence both haunting and heartbreaking. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice trembling with fear and empathy. She didn't respond, merely continuing to gaze out the window, her silent plea etched into my soul. The temperature dropped further, my breath visible in the frigid air as the whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Help us. Find us." Determined to reach out, I took a step closer, my heart aching with the weight of her sorrow. "I'll help you," I promised, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at me. "I want to help you find peace." At that moment, the room seemed to blur around the edges, the boundaries between past and present dissolving as the spirits of the Sodder children reached out to me. Memories flooded my mind, visions of the night the fire broke out, the screams of panic, the frantic search for the missing children, and the haunting realization that they were gone forever. The girl before me began to fade, her form dissolving into the shadows like mist under the morning sun. But her presence left an indelible mark on my heart, a reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring pain of loss. The whispers softened, their sorrowful pleas giving way to a peaceful silence that settled over the house. As dawn broke, the oppressive chill lifted, replaced by the soft glow of the rising sun filtering through the broken windows. I knew that the spirits had found some semblance of peace, their lingering anguish finally acknowledged and understood. Packing up my equipment, I took one last look around the house, feeling a sense of closure that had eluded the Sodder family for decades. Driving away from West Point, the snow began to fall gently, the world slowly waking to a new day. The story of the Sodder family's tragic loss had found its voice, a haunting legacy that would forever be etched in the annals of unsolved mysteries. As I drove through the quiet streets, the echoes of their sorrow whispered through the cold air. A haunting reminder of the night I faced the ghosts of the past and helped them find the peace they so desperately sought. Years later, the case remains unsolved, the missing children forever lost to the shadows of time. But the memory of that night lingers, a testament to the enduring power of empathy and the belief that even in death, there is hope for redemption. And sometimes, on the coldest nights of winter, when the wind howls just right and the snow blankets the world in silence, I can almost hear their faint whispers carried by the breeze. A haunting echo of the night I uncovered the truth behind the Sodder family tragedy and the restless spirits that continue to linger in the heart of West Virginia. Story number 7. Whispers of Midnight. Winter in Montana was unforgiving. The snow clung to the pines, muffling the world in a blanket of silence that only the occasional howl of the wind could penetrate. My name is Jack Morrison, a seasoned investigator with the Montana Bureau of Missing Persons. Over the years, I've seen my fair share of disappearances, but Patricia Meehan's case from 1989 has always lingered in the back of my mind, a haunting mystery that refuses to be forgotten. Patricia was a vibrant young woman, full of life and dreams, who vanished on New Year's Eve after a car accident. Witnesses reported seeing her standing by the roadside, seemingly unharmed, staring blankly at the wreckage before she simply walked away into the night. Despite extensive searches, she was never found, and her disappearance remains one of the most perplexing cases in Montana's history. It was a particularly cold December night when I decided to revisit Patricia's case, driven by an inexplicable pull that I couldn't quite understand. The old case files were spread out on my desk, each one a testament to the desperation and hope that had characterized the search for her. But something was different this time, an unshakable feeling that there was more to Patricia's disappearance than met the eye. I drove to the site of the accident, a desolate stretch of highway flanked by dense forests that seemed to watch silently as I approached. The road was slick with ice, and my headlights barely cut through the darkness. Parking my car near the edge, I stepped out, the cold biting through my coat as I surveyed the area. The remnants of the crash were still visible, a twisted wreckage that had long since been claimed by nature. As I walked closer, the memories of that night flooded back. Patricia's laughter, her fear as she exited the vehicle, and the eerie calmness that enveloped her as she stood by the wreckage. I pulled out my flashlight, the beam piercing the inky blackness, and began to explore the surroundings, hoping to find something I might have missed years ago. Hours passed with nothing out of the ordinary, just the relentless whisper of the wind and the crunch of snow under my boots. Just as I was about to call it a night, a faint sound caught my attention, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper that seemed to emanate from the very trees around me. I froze, straining to listen, but the sound faded as quickly as it had appeared. Shaking off the unease, I continued my search, moving deeper into the forest. The moon was a mere sliver in the sky, its light barely illuminating the path ahead. That's when I saw her, a figure standing just off the road, partially obscured by the trees. My heart raced as I approached, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. "Patricia," I called out, my voice barely a whisper against the howling wind. She didn't respond. Instead, she turned slowly, her face pale and expressionless, eyes hollow and devoid of any warmth. My breath caught in my throat as I took a step closer, the flashlight revealing more of her unsettling appearance. Her clothes were tattered, and her movements were jerky, almost unnatural, as if she were a puppet controlled by unseen strings. "Patricia, please," pleaded, reaching out a hand to touch her shoulder. But as my fingers made contact with her cold skin, she vanished, leaving behind only the lingering scent of lavender and a trail of wet footprints leading into the darkness. Panic set in as I followed the footprints, my mind racing with questions. How could she disappear so suddenly? Where was she going? the whispers returned, louder this time, forming indistinct words that sent chills down my spine. "Don't leave us," they echoed, a chorus of sorrow and desperation that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I stumbled through the forest, the path ahead obscured by snow and shadows. The temperature plummeted, my breath forming icy crystals in the air as the whispers grew more frantic. Just as I thought I couldn't go any further, I reached a clearing where an old, abandoned cabin stood. The structure looked as though it hadn't been touched in decades. Windows boarded up and the door hanging loosely on its hinges. Desperate for answers, I approached the cabin, the whispers now a cacophony of voices pleading for help. Pushing open the creaky door, I stepped inside, the interior cloaked in darkness and decay. The air was thick with the scent of mold and something else, something metallic and unsettling. My flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls as I moved deeper into the cabin. In the center of the room stood a large, ornate mirror, its surface cracked and clouded. As I approached, the whispers seemed to converge, forming coherent sentences that sent shivers down my spine. "Remember us," they pleaded. "Don't forget our pain." I gazed into the mirror, and the reflection that stared back at me was not my own. Instead, I saw the faces of lost souls, families torn apart, friends abandoned, all victims of the same tragic fate that had befallen Patricia. Their eyes were filled with sorrow, their mouths moving silently as they relived their last moments of pain and fear. A sudden gust of wind blew through the cabin, causing the mirror to shatter, the sound of breaking glass ringing out like a death knell. The spirits began to materialize around me, their forms ghostly and translucent, each one replaying their tragic stories. I felt their anguish, their desperate need for closure, and a profound sadness that weighed heavily on my heart. In the midst of the chaos, Patricia appeared before me once more, her face still pale and expressionless. "Help us," she whispered, her voice filled with an unending sorrow. "Find peace for us." Tears welled up in my eyes as I realized the truth. The spirits were bound to this place by their unresolved pain, unable to move on from the tragedies that had defined their lives. Patricia's disappearance was not just a simple case of a missing person. It was a gateway for these restless souls to reach out, seeking help from the living to find the peace they so desperately needed. Determined to help, I spent the following days researching the history of the cabin and the surrounding area, uncovering stories of untimely deaths, lost loves, and broken promises. Each revelation deepened my understanding of the spirit's plight and the darkness that had consumed this once peaceful place. With the help of a local medium, I returned to the cabin, ready to facilitate the spirit's journey towards closure. The night was colder than ever, the wind howling through the trees like the cries of the damned. We performed a cleansing ritual, our voices merging in a harmonious plea for forgiveness and release. The spirits gathered around us, their presence both terrifying and awe-inspiring as they listened to our heartfelt intentions. As the ritual reached its peak, a profound sense of calm settled over the cabin. The spirits began to fade, their forms dissolving into the ether like mist under the morning sun. Patricia stood before me one last time, her eyes now filled with gratitude and peace. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice a gentle breeze that carried away the last remnants of sorrow. With that, she vanished, leaving behind a sense of tranquility that had long eluded the cabin. The whispers ceased, replaced by the soothing sounds of the winter night outside. I knew that we had succeeded in helping these lost souls find the peace they so desperately sought. Their stories finally acknowledged and remembered. Back at the bureau, I filed away the case with a sense of fulfillment and closure. Patricia Meehan's disappearance had been more than a tragic loss. It had been a beacon for other lost souls, guiding them towards the light and helping them break free from the chains of their past. Years have passed since that fateful winter, but the memory of Patricia and the spirits of the cabin remain etched in my mind. They serve as a constant reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown and the enduring power of empathy and determination in the face of unimaginable sorrow. But sometimes, on the coldest nights of winter, when the wind howls just right and the snow blankets the world in silence, I catch a faint whisper carried by the breeze. A haunting echo of the night. I faced the restless spirits of Montana and helped them find the peace they so desperately sought.